How are we doing, Kansas Jayhawks fans? This is your host, Nick Rondeau, bringing at you some Jayhawks Daily content. And we've got some player profiles. We've got some potential, blow up seasons. We've got some amazing season. Everything that's I'm pondering in my head, kind of, searching everything out there, what people are thinking about us. There are some rankings have come out. Andy Katz put out Rage Bait again, listing Darren Peterson as one of the top wings in the country. He's a guard, Andy, and I'm pretty sure JT Toppin's also not a wing, but I'm sure everyone's seeing this stuff. He's good at what he does, but I'm bringing you the Jayhawks content exclusively, and so we got a little player profile, and I decided to do two today just because, yes, Corbin Allen could be redshirting, and I don't want to short you guys by, giving this lovely detail about a redshirt player coming up this year, but we're running into both. And I really, like I said the other day on the pod, I really do like Corbin Allen. I think he has a very easy possibility to contribute this year. Unfortunately, it does not seem like that will be the case unless, he probably really shows something in these exhibition games, which, that Louisville game, I could see him contributing. They've got some depth too. They'll show some players late, but so going into it, Corbin Allen, the local kid, the freshman guard, and he committed in May, so we're going reverse chronologically of when these guys joined the team. And he's a little bit of a taller guard. He's about 6'5", so not the traditional one, but he's from Oak Hill, played at Oak Park High School, and he did leave Oak Park High School as the leading scorer all time. So pretty impressive. He was Mr. Show Me Basketball, which is, State Player of the Year. He was also a two-time Dorena Award winner, which I'm sure everyone in the Kansas City area knows. That goes to essentially the best basketball player of that year, male that is. But two times, that's very impressive, very impressive. He was a three-time All-State first-teamer and four-time All-Conference as well as All-District selection. So, two-time Conference District Player of the Years. Obviously, you're getting those when you're getting your Dorenas. This guy was very accomplished in high school to only be a three-star recruit. And this is kind of what, I was speaking to. He's incredibly capable. It just like a redshirt year, some people look at as purely developmental, purely, medical related. For this, I feel like it could just be a waste, honestly. I feel like we get caught in the position last year where Jamar McDowell, decides to redshirt. And we could have used him. We genuinely could have. Maybe they were expecting at the beginning of the year, okay, we'll have no use for you. This roster is loaded. We've got A.J. Storr. We've got Rylan Griffin. They're going to play so well. No, it didn't work out that way, and we redshirted, and we paid the price for it. So, I think obviously a lot of deliberation goes into this, but I do have a feeling that Corbin Allen could contribute just because he was clearly an accomplished player. He had over 1,000 points. He had 1,945 and over 1,000 rebounds. He was the first player at Oak Park High School to do that as well. So an accomplished rebounder in his own right, because he is that taller guard. And he was one of the few guys that hit a three at late night in the fog, so it can't be that bad of a shooter. Unfortunately, I didn't have statistics for his high school for percentages, but looking at some of his highlight tapes in film, he's got a good stroke. I would put him at the 30 mark, something it's something confident, but he's also a playmaker. He loves to play with the ball in his hands. And he's an excellent driver, as you'd expect. The mid-range is kind of there. The three-point shot, like I said, kind of there, maybe a little bit more than the pull-up game. But he's a very talented scorer. I think he also is probably a perfect off-ball player off of anyone. He's not going to be bringing the ball up per se, but he also looks like a very tenacious defender. He just seems like he's one guy that you don't need to tell to buy into Bill Self's system. So if he does say, hey, you're redshirting this year, I think he buys into that. If you're playing maybe 2 to 5 minutes a game or every other 3 games or something like that, okay, coach. Like he just seems like he loves it because he's from the area. He's bought into the Jayhawks, and I don't see him as being a person that strays away and will transfer out based off of lack of playing time. Heck, like I mentioned, look at Jamar McDowell. He's bought in. People feel bad for him. Kind of maybe getting the short end of the stick and being less talented. Some of those guards that we've got or some of the transfers who knows what they're going to be. Stick around and fight for your place at Kansas because there's no real better place to play under than Bill Self. So I just think some people got to take the back seat. Let Bill do what he does. Let these players do what they do, their agents, representatives, all that, because they're definitely getting the best out of them. So Corbin Allen, potential redshirt, but he could contribute. He could contribute for sure. And that brings us to our next one. I didn't want to short you guys just in case he does, but it's going to be Melvin Council, and that's because he was our first, or technically our last transfer we got. But he was, yes, he was our last transfer we got. But he committed in April, later in April. But he was in the portal for about 3 weeks to a month. So, definitely weighed his options and saw kind of where people, landed. And we've got him. And I really do. I think this is one that people are going to be kind of pounding their fist for. How did we let this guy slip? Because almost nobody knows about him. Nobody knows how good he is, really, because, he played 2 years of junior college to start. He played 1 year at Wagner College, which is, former, he wasn't at the time, but former Danny Hurley and Bobby Hurley coached at Wagner. This guy's originally from Rochester, New York, stayed up north. Then he played a year at, Woj's St. Bonaventure team, who were very scrappy, very, feisty, especially at the end of the year, had a lot of close games, but they had a run of, maybe it was only covering, but they had covered for 16 straight games along those lines. But just a very impressive performance for how well they were outperforming, and he was a big reason to that. He was a dog. He was one of their bigger players. He was taking 14 shots a game for them last year. So one of their top, 1A and 1Bs, I would say. And yes, he shot sub 30% from three, but I don't need you to shoot over that if that's not your forte. And his forte was freaking driving, slashing the rim, was taking it right to him. It was also scoring off transition. Excellent transition player, because he was pretty much starting the transition half the time. If he was not, picking that ball off and already up the court, looking for one of his teammates, he was poking it to himself and going, taking it coast to coast. So I just think Melvin Council, this 1 year of eligibility, he reminds me kind of, and not too much, because I love my guy Tyshawn, but he kind of reminds me of Tyshawn Taylor. And it's, he's a bigger size guy. He's kind of lengthy, got long arms, and he'll be, a very effective defender, especially in conference play. Do we not, DeJuan Harris's arms were, it felt like they went on forever, and he was just poking everything. I see him as maybe not no different, but no real loss to that. He's going to be just that as effective as an on-ball defender, and, a pretty effective off-ball one, I would say. And how much more confidence do you need in his ability to succeed on this Kansas basketball team than Darren Peterson saying, oh, Melvin's that dog. Yeah, no, we're going to be one of the best backcourts in the country. That's all I need. Probably a lot of that's attributed to him, but keep us underrated. Keep us off all your top 10s, all your top 15 lists for best, backcourt, front court, team even, anything, transfer class. We want to be lower ranked. If KU fans learned nothing, it's the last 2 years, being ranked number one is a curse. Even the year before that, UNC, they didn't make the tournament. At least we did. But, it's not something we need to have a target on our back saying, we're that team. We're your Super Bowl, essentially. No, we don't need that. We need to earn that right. And that's something that we will be doing again. And, 15 points, 4 assists, 5 rebounds, 2 steals on 14 attempts, 2-to-1 assist turnover ratio for Melvin Council last year. That's exactly the player you need. He's not going to be putting up that carbon copy of stats for us. I think he'll probably between the 8 to 10 points per game range, but he'll be a contributor, and I think he'll be very much, a facilitator. I think he'll be over 5 assists a game for sure. That number will be up, and like I said, 5 rebounds. He was a boarder. By the end of the season, he went on a streak where he was 7 to 9 rebounds for 8 straight games or something like that. He gets to the glass. He'll help out those big men because he likes to start that transition. So I think great. He even had that Wagner team. Remember that a couple years ago? Yeah, they won their first 4 game, but then they lost by 30 or so to UNC, but he actually played pretty well in that. He did. Like, I remember that being like, oh, wow, that guy's actually trying to lead them back even though they're down 24 points. He had, I think, like 19. Like, he was doing his part. So, a career high of 28. He has that ability to explode. I do think Melvin Council is going to contribute in a very effective way for us. And, again, we'll see how the split kind of lands with playing time. How much is Melvin? How much it's Jaden? When does Cole Rosario come into the mix? And, is G and Gala really just that safety insurance plan? Or is he kind of going to play, more of the Diggy Coat role where he was playing a lot more? Remy Martin, I don't think it will be that much like Remy Martin, but, who knows what G and Gala's role will be. And kind of just who knows where this backcourt's going to land out. But I think Melvin Council is going to be a very key contributor in that area. So, next I want to talk about season expectation. We've kind of broken down season expectation overall, but we didn't always go over our best and our worst case scenarios. And you got to start with the worst case scenario because I'm not ending this podcast on a crappy note. So, this is the hit the button, that the season is imploded scenario, something that I hope will obviously not happen, but I would put that number at about, I would say 20-11. I don't think we will get that point, and I was being generous with some of these, but I also, worst case could be more losses. I don't see that happening. I have us essentially in that losing all our key non-conference games besides Missouri. So, the NC State, the UNC, our UConn game, I have this, more than just, a number, I have it. Darren Peterson just can't hold the load of carrying this team too much. Maybe he's scoring 20 points, maybe he's only scoring 16, and this team really relies on him too much to the point where, we're getting almost blown out in some of these losses because he can't handle the load for us. But he's still, his floor is still a great basketball player. That's obvious. I have also the transfers. Inefficient again. Bill Self swing and a miss with all three transfers, making a big old strikeout with Trey White not being a good rebounder, not being an efficient shooter. Jaden Dawson coming in like Ryland Griffin, being a timid shooter, not, ineffective from 3-point, around 30% when you need him at 40. And Melvin Council, who I just hyped up, being a turnover-prone guard, doesn't help being next to Darren Peterson, and honestly, can't really knock down a shot. And this is kind of like for the whole team, not just the transfers. Nobody can knock down a three. This is what I'm saying is absolute worst case scenario. We are seeing Kansas play bad basketball, only good defense. I still think in a worst case scenario, we're still in a very good defensive team. That's what keeps us to get 20 wins. But I think that's really, even the freshmen, Cole Rosario never takes a step. Bryson Tiller, maybe injury. I'm not gonna put that on there. Nope, not putting it back out there. But he's just tries to be too much like a wing. His shooting's inefficient. He doesn't rebound and play defense as well as we know he can. And maybe Samis doesn't even play, or maybe he plays and he really is just a drill guy and cannot kind of establish himself in the game. And the bigger one is, and maybe Flory doesn't take that next step. Maybe Flory is just a 8-and-in kind of center, can't really dribble or pass, and, is just a simple rim runner. So, yeah, things could get dark. Who knows? Like, that is, I'm saying nothing goes right for this team. Obviously it's not going to happen. I mean, come on. There's no way it's going to happen. We're not hitting that button. There is potential for that to happen. All of those sequence of events, freshmen don't spark, transfers don't work, Flory can't handle the next step, and DP just cannot carry this team completely by himself. But what about the best case scenario? And yes, you see that number. I say 28-3. I say why not? I say a sweep in the non-con. We don't, see ya UConn, see ya UNC, goodbye Duke. We win all those games. We take both Missouri and NC State in those close ones. I could see it, and then our only losses I think I marked in that one were the Houston at home, which again, that's the end of the season. Who knows how Houston's playing basketball by that point? I figure pretty good, but maybe we're playing better basketball. Maybe that's a 29-2, or maybe that 20-3 is not per se that game. Maybe it's we drop the Texas Tech at Lubbock. Maybe we drop at Iowa State and an at Arizona. Maybe we go undefeated at Allen Fieldhouse and take that Houston game, and that happens. But that's what I'm saying is that is, I think, our best case scenario, and that means Darren Peterson is putting up 20 plus. I meant plus a game. Flory Badunga is a lottery pick. He has established himself as he is hitting shots from within 14, maybe even 16 feet, and he's getting 10, 12 rebounds a game, 3 blocks. Putting up absolute, crazy numbers, and all the transfers firing on all cylinders. We're shooting as a team about 34, 35, maybe we'll say 35% from 3. That I can really see that team if they, rebound well. Bryson Tiller can rebound well. Paul Mbia is the stud on defense that we think he can be. I see no reason why they can't go 20-3. And again, people are too afraid to make that prediction right now, and I get it. And I was too afraid too. My season prediction didn't have us that. I chalked up a couple more losses for us. It's just because we have too many question marks. And question marks don't always mean bad things. Question marks don't always mean, less interesting, less exciting things. Maybe it's great. Maybe that question mark is Melvin Council is a dog. Maybe he turns himself into a freaking draft pick. Maybe he is Tyshawn Taylor and just explodes. Maybe Darren Peterson is just the greatest player to ever put on a Kansas basketball uniform. These things could happen easily. So we had to end on our best case scenario. You just have to. You can't end on that implosion. Nothing goes right. And I just maybe Bill Self goes and grabs himself another Coach of the Year. Something like that. Big. Obviously, in this scenario, we're getting DP as Big 12 Player of the Year, being the 5th freshman to ever do it. Maybe that means he's also easily a finalist for Naismith Player of the Year, probably competing with with Boozer and maybe DeBonsa, but I don't know. Probably Braden Smith. We'll see how Purdue does. Purdue we'll see in the tournament if you can get out of the first round. But, that's what I think. I just, best case scenario, we kind of steamroll. We get in a good, about 10 plus straight win streak. Just where the boys are buzzing. Starting off the season undefeated is what that is. That is, I have them going almost, 16-0, 15-0? I've checked, but that means you're starting off hot, and who would not love to start off hot as a Kansas team? But it's all about finishing hot. You got to go into March. You got to go into that conference tournament with a fiery group, and I think they could. I'm going to toss out there. That's best case. Best case is really undefeated, but best case is realistically is that level of play. Bill Self can get his guys there. We'll see what we've got, but I'll keep looking out for some Kansas Jayhawk news for you guys. I appreciate you watching this video so much. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Comment anything you guys want me to start covering. But hey, season's coming up pretty soon. We'll have that preview on Friday for the exhibition game for Louisville. And after that, one more week until tip-off. I'm really excited, guys. I hope you are too. So thank you very much. Rock Chalk. Go Jayhawks.